Howdy, y'all. I'm Swan Marion, the bookworm cowboy. And here I am at Haven Humane. Here with me is Fortune, the cat. Come on, Fortune. Oh, she's climbing up. This, oh, this is our local cat. Fortune, she's a big gal, but we're trying to exercise her. Yeah. But first, I'm gonna read A Wind in the Door by Madeline L'Engle. Yeah, she's an adorable big kitty, big little kitty. Yeah. Chapter 3. The Man in the Night. A huge, dark form strode swiftly through the woods and into the pasture. It reached them in a few strides and then stood very still, so that the folds of the long robe seemed chiseled out of granite.
"Do not be afraid," he repeated. "He won't hurt you."
He? Yes, Charles Wallace's drive of dragons was a single creature. Although Meg was not at all surprised that Charles Wallace had confused this fierce wild being with dragons. She had the feeling that she never saw all of it at once, and which of all the eyes could she meet? Merry eyes, wise eyes, ferocious eyes, kitten eyes, dragon eyes, opening and closing, looking at her, looking at Charles Wallace and Calvin and the strange tall man. And wings in constant motion, covering, uncovering the eyes. When the wings were spread out, they had a span of at least 10 feet. And when they were all folded in, the creature resembled a misty, feathery sphere. Little spurts of flame and smoke sprouted up between the wings. It could certainly start a grass fire if it weren't careful. Meg did not wonder that Charles Wallace had not approached it. Again, the tall stranger reassured them.
"He won't hurt you."
The stranger was dark as night, and tall as a tree. And there was something in the repose of his body, the quiet of his voice, which drove away fear. Charles Wallace stepped towards him. "Who are you?"
"A teacher."
Charles Wallace's sigh was longing. "I wish you were my teacher."
"I am." The cello-like voice was calm, slightly amused.
Charles Wallace advanced another step. "And my dragons?" The tall man, the teacher, held out his hand in the direction of the wild creature, which seemed to gather itself together to rise up to give a great courteous bow to all of them. The teacher said,
"His name is Prognos."
Charles Wallace said,
"Yes."
"He's not dragon."
"He is a cherubim."
"What?"
"A cherubim."
Flame spurted skyward in indignation at the sound in the atmosphere. Great wings raised and spread, and the children were looked at by a great many eyes. When the wild thing spoke, it was not in vocal words, but directly into their minds. "I suppose you think I ought to be a golden-haired baby face with no body and two useless little wings. Charles Wallace stared at the great creature. It might be simpler if you were. Meg pulled her poncho closer about her for protection in case the cherubim spouted fire in her direction. It is a constant amazement to me, the cherubim thought at them, that so many earthling artists paint cherubims to resemble baby pigs. Calvin made a sound which, if he had been less astonished, would have been a laugh. But cherubim is a plural. The fire-spouting beast returned. I am practically plural. The little boy thought I was a drive of dragons, didn't he? But I am certainly not a cherub. I am a singular cherubim. What are you doing here? Charles Wallace asked. I was sent. Sent? To be in your class. I don't know what I've done to be assigned to a class with such immature earthlings. I've had a enough job as it is. I really don't fancy coming back to school at all at my age. How old are you? Meg held her poncho out wide, ready to use it as a shield. Age for a cherubim is immaterial. It's only for time-bound creatures that age even exists. I am in cherubic terms still a child. That is all you need to know. It's very rude to ask questions about age. Two of the wings crossed and uncrossed. The message had been rueful rather than annoyed. Charles Wallace spoke to the tall man. You are my teacher and his teacher too? I am. Charles Wallace looked up at the strange dark face, which was stern and gentle at the same time. I think I must be having a dream. I wish I'd just go on dreaming and not wake up. What is real? The teacher stretched out an arm, gently touched a bruise on Charles Wallace's cheek, the puffs and discolored flesh under his eye. You are awake. Oh, if you're asleep, Meg said. We're all having the same dream, aren't we, Calvin? The thing that makes me think we're awake is that if I were to dream about a cherub, it wouldn't look like that. Several with very blue, long-lashed eyes looked directly at Calvin. Prognosis, as the teacher told you. Prognosis. Don't get any ideas of calling me Cherry or Cheery or Beamy. It would be easier, Charles Wallace said. But the creature repeated firmly. Prognosis. One of the dark form of the teacher came a deep, gentle rumbling of amusement. A rumbling which expanded and rose and bubbled into a great laughter. All right then, my children. Are you ready to start? We will call it, for want of a better word in your language, school. Are you ready to start school? Charles Wallace, a small and rather ludicrous figure in the yellow slicker he had pulled on over his pajamas, looked up at the oak tree height and strength of the teacher. The student of bed at time's running out. Hey, wait a minute, Calvin objected. What are you going to do with Charles? You and the cherubim can't take him off without consulting his parents. What makes you think I'm planning to? The teacher gave an easy little jump. And there he was, comfortably sitting on the tallest of the glacial rocks, as though it were a stool, his arms loosely about his knees, the folds of his robe blending with the moonlit stone.
And I came not only to call Charles Wallace, I came to call all three of you.
Meg looked startled. All of us, but
You may address me as Bludgeony,
the teacher said. Charles Wallace asked, Mr. Bludgeony? Dr. Bludgeony? Sir Bludgeony?
Bludgeony is enough. That is all of my name you need to know. Are you ready?
Meg still looked astonished. Calvin and me too?
Yes.
But, as always, as when she felt unsure, Meg was argumentative. Charles Wallace doesn't need, he's the best student in the school. Calvin doesn't need it, he's the best student in school and the best athlete. He's important in everything, and I'm getting along now. It's Charles who's the trouble. You can see for yourself. School, ordinary school, is just not going to work out for him. Jenny's voice was cool.
That is hardly my problem.
And why are you here? That Jenny might have been sent solely to help her brother did not seem at all astonishing to Meg. Again came the rumble that bubbled up into a laughter.
My dears, you must not take yourself so seriously. Why should school be easy for Charles Wallace?
It shouldn't be this bad. This is the United States of America. They'll hurt him if someone doesn't do something.
He will have to learn to defend himself.
Charles Wallace, looking very small and defenseless, spoke quietly. The teacher is right. It's a question of learning to adapt. Nobody can do that for me. If everybody will leave me alone and stop trying to help me, I'll learn eventually how not to be conspicuous. I can assure you I haven't mentioned mitochondria and farandole lately.
The teacher
nodded grave approval. Charles Wallace moved closer to him. Now you haven't come because I'm making such a mess of school, but Jenny, you haven't come because of that, then why are you here?
I have come not so much to offer you my help as to ask for ours. Let's ask for yours.
Ours? Meg asked. Charles Wallace looked up at the teacher. Not much of help to anybody right now. It isn't just that I'm not getting along in school.
Yes,
the Jenny said.
I know of the other problem. Nevertheless, you are called. Anybody who is invited to study with one of the teachers is called because he is needed. You have talents we cannot afford to lose. We must find out what is making you ill and, if possible, make you well again.
If possible, Meg asked anxiously. Calvin asked sharply, Charles, ill? What's wrong? What's the matter with Charles? Look at him, Meg said in a low voice. Look how pale he is, and he has trouble breathing. He got out of breath just walking across the orchard. She turned to the teacher. Oh, please, Miss Jenny, can you help? But Jenny looked down at her darkly, quietly.
I think, my child, that it is you who must help.
Me?
Yes.
Do I do anything in the world to help Charles? Calvin looked questioningly at the teacher.
Yes, Calvin, you too.
How can I help?
You will learn as the lessons progress.
Calvin asked, why are you going to have these lessons? Where's your school? The Jenny jumped lightly down from the rock. Despite his height and girth, he moved as though he were used to heavier gravity than the earth. He strode lightly halfway across the pasture to where there was a large flat rock where the children often went with their parents to watch the stars. He dropped down onto the rock and lay stretched out on his back, gesturing to others to join him. Meg lay beside him. with Calvin on her other side, so that she felt protected, not only from the cold night wind, but from the cherubim, who had reached the rock with the beat of a wing, and assorted himself into an assemblage of wings and eyes and puffs of smoke at the discreet distance from Charles Wallace, who was on Blajani's other side. "Say, dragons," Charles Wallace said, "I'm not afraid of you." The cherubim rearranged his rings. "Brodkinos, please." The genie looked up at the sky, raised his arms, and made a wide, embracing gesture. The clouds had almost dispersed. Only a few rapidly flying streamers filled the stars, which blazed with the fierce brilliance of the rapidly plummeting mercury. The teacher's sweeping motion indicated the entire sparkling stretch of sky. Then he sat up, folded his arms across his chest, and with strange luminous eyes turned inward, so that he was looking not at the stars nor at the children, but into some deep, dark place far in, deeper and deeper, for time out of time. Then the focus of his eyes returned to the children, and he gave his radiant smile and answered Calvin's question as though not a moment had passed. "Where is my school?" "Here, there, everywhere. In the schoolyard during first grade recess, with the cherubim and seraphim among the farandole." Charles Wallace exclaimed, "My mother has isolated the farandole." "So she has." "But Jenny, you know if something's wrong with my farandole and my mitochondria?" But Jenny replied quietly, "Your mother and Dr. Kalubra are trying to find that out." "Well then, what do we do now?" "Go home to bed." "Let's go." You will all go to school as usual in the morning." He was told an anticlimax. "But your school!" Meg cried in disappointment. She had hoped that Charles Wallace would never ever have to enter the old red school building again. But then he would take over and make everything all right. "My children," Jenny said gravely, "my school building is the entire cosmos. Before your time with me is over, I may have to take you great distances and to very strange places." Are we all your whole class?" Meg, Calvin asked. "Meg and Charles and me?" Barnoses let out a puff of huffy smoke. "Sorry, and the cherubim?" The genie said, "Wait, you will know when the time comes." "And why on earth is one of our classmates a cherubim?" Meg said. "Sorry, Prognosis, but it does seem very insulting to you to have to be with us mortals like this." Prognosis batted several eyes in apology. "I didn't mean what I said about immature earthlings. If we have been sent to the same teacher, then we have things to learn from each other. A cherubim is not a higher order than earthlings, you know, just different." The genie nodded. "Yes, you have much to learn from each other. Meanwhile, I will give each of you assignments. Charles Wallace, can you guess what yours is?" "To learn to adapt, and I want you to change," Meg cried. "Neither do I," the genie replied. "Charles Wallace's problem is to learn to adapt while remaining wholly himself." "What's my assignment, Blajani?" Meg asked. The teacher frowned briefly in thought. Then,
I am trying to put it into Earth terms, terms which you will understand. You must pass 3 tests or trials. You must start immediately on the first one.
what is it?
Part of the trial is that you must discover for yourself what it is.
But how?
That I cannot tell you, but you will not be alone. Prognosis is to work with you. You will be what I think you would call partners. Together you must pass 3 tests.
But suppose we fail?
Prognosis flung several wings over his eyes in horror at the thought.
The genie said quietly,
It is a possibility, but I would prefer you not to suppose any such thing. Remember that these 3 trials will be nothing you can imagine or expect right now.
But the genie, I can hardly take a cherubim to school with me.
The genie looked affectionately at the great creature, whose wings were still folded protectingly about himself. That is for the 2 of you to decide. He's not always visible, you know. Maybe I find him a little simpler when he's just a wind or a flame. But if he was convinced, he'd be more reassuring to Earthlings if he enfleshed himself.
Charles Wallace reached out and slipped his hand into the teacher's. If I could take him just this way, looking like a tribe of dragons in the schoolyard with me, I bet I wouldn't have any trouble. Meg said, Didn't you tell me you were supposed to bring a pet to school tomorrow? Charles Wallace laughed. May bring a small pet to class tomorrow to share with the class. Prognosis appeared under one wing.
I am not a joking matter.
Oh, Progo, Magritte assured him. It's only whistling in the dark. Charles Wallace, still holding the teacher's hands, asked him, Will you come home with us and meet my mother?
Not tonight, Charles. It is very late for you to be up. Who knows what tomorrow will bring? I am only a teacher. I would not arrange the future ahead of time if I could. Come, I will walk part of the way back to the house with you.
Meg asked, What about Progo? Prognosis?
Cherubim replied, It is not the time for a journey to meet your family. It is hardly the time for me. I am quite comfortable here. Perhaps you can come meet me early tomorrow morning, and we can compare our night thoughts.
Okay, I guess that's best. Good night then.
Good night, Makeling. He waved a wing at her, then folded himself into a great puff. No eyes showed, no flame, no smoke.
Meg shivered. The genie said,
Are you cold?
She shivered again. That thunderstorm before dinner, I suppose it was caused by the cold front meeting a warm front. But it did seem awfully cosmic. I never expected to meet a cherubim. The genie, Calvin asked, You haven't given me an assignment.
No, my son. There is work for you, difficult work and dangerous, but I cannot tell you yet what it is. Your assignment is to wait, without question. Please come to Murray's house after school tomorrow. You are free to do that?
Oh, sure, Calvin said. I can skip my after-school stuff for once.
Good. Until then, now let us go.
Charles Wallace led the way, with Meg and Calvin close behind. The wind was blowing out of the northwest, colder it seemed, with each gust. When they reached the stone wall into the apple orchard, the moon was shining clearly, with that extraordinary brightness which makes light and dark acute and separate. Some apples still clung to their branches, a few as dark as blood Jenny, others shining with a silvery light, almost as though they were illuminated from within. On top of the pale stones of the wall lay a dark shadow, which was moving slowly, sinuously. It rose up, careful and coiling, seemed to spread a hood as it loomed over them. Its forked tongue flickered, catching the light, and a hissing issued from its mouth. Louise. This was not the threatening Louise who had hissed and clacked at the impossible Mr. Jenkins. This was the Louise Meg and Charles had seen that afternoon. The Louise who had been waiting to greet the unknown shadow. The shadow who, Meg suddenly understood, must have been Blajani. Nevertheless, she pressed closer to Calvin. She had never felt very secure around Louise, and the snake's strange behavior that afternoon and evening made her seem even more alien than when she was only the twins' pet. Now Louise was weaving slowly back and forth in a gentle rhythm, almost as though she were making a serpentine version of a steep curtsy, and sibilant sound was a gentle trebling fluting. The Jenny bowed to the snake. Louise most definitely returned the bow. But Janie explained gravely,
"She is a colleague of mine."
But hey now! Calvin sprayed. Wait a minute!
"She is a teacher. That is why she is so fond of the two boys, Sandy and Denny's. One day they will be teachers too."
Nick said, "They're going to be successful businessmen and support the rest of us in a way for which we are not accustomed." The genie waved this aside.
"They will be teachers. It is a high calling. You must not be distressed that it is not yours. You too have a work."
Louise, with the last burst of her tiny strange melody, dropped back to the wall and disappeared among the stones. "Perhaps we're dreaming after all," Calvin said wonderingly.
"What is real?" the teacher asked again. "I will say good night to you now."
Charles Wallace was reluctant to leave. "You won't wake up in the morning and find it all never happened. You won't wake up and find we dreamed everything." "If only one of us does," Meg said, "and nobody else remembers any of it, then it's a dream. But if we all wake up remembering, then that really happened."
"Wait until tomorrow to find what tomorrow holds,"
Jenny advised.
"Good night, my children."
And they did not ask him where he was going to spend the night, though Meg wondered, because it was the kind of presumptuous question one could not possibly ask Jenny. They left him standing and watching after them. The folds of his robe chiseled like granite, his dark face catching and reflecting the moonlight with fused glass. He crossed the orchard and garden, entered the house as usual, by the back way through the pantry. The door to the lab was open, and the lights on. Mrs. Murray was bent over her microscope, and Dr. Calubra was curled up in an old red leather chair reading. The lab was a long, narrow room with a great slab of stone for a floor. It had originally been used to keep milk and butter and other perishables, long before the days of refrigerators, and it was still difficult to heat in winter. The long work counter with the stone sink at one end was ideal for Mrs. Murray's lab equipment. In one corner were two comfortable chairs and a reading lamp, which softened the clinical glare of the lights over the counter. May could not think of a time when she had seen her mother relaxing in one of those chairs. She inevitably perched on one of the lab stools. She looked up from the strange convulsions of the microelectron microscope. "Charles, what are you doing out of bed?" "I woke up," Charles Wallace said blandly. Me and Megan come outside, so I went to get them. Mrs. Murray glanced sharply at her son, then greeted Calvin warmly. Charles Wallace asked, "Is it okay if we make some cocoa?" "It's very late for you to be up, Charles, and tomorrow's a school day. You'll only get back to sleep." Mrs. Murray seemed about to refuse, but Dr. Kalubra closed the book, saying, "Why not, of course. Let Charles have a nap when he gets home in the afternoon. I'd like to make some cocoa myself. Let's make it out here while your mother goes on with her work. I'll do it." "I'll get the milk and stuff from the kitchen," Meg said. With Dr. Luis present, they were not, she felt, free to talk to their mother about the events of the evening. The children were all fond of Dr. Luis and trusted her completely as a physician, but they were not quite sure that she had their parents' capacity to accept the extraordinary. Almost sure, but not quite. Dr. Kalubra had a good deal in common with their parents. She too had given up work which paid extremely well in both money and prestige to come live in a small rural village. Too many of my colleagues have forgotten that they are supposed to practice the art of healing. If I don't give the gift of healing in my hands, then all my expensive training isn't worth very much. She too had turned her back on the glitter of worldly success. Meg knew that her parents, despite the fact that they were consulted by the President of the United States, had given up much when they moved to the country in order to devote their lives to pure research. The discoveries, many of them made in the Stone Laboratory, had made the Murrays more or less open to the strange, to the mysterious, to the unexplainable. Dr. Kaluba's work was perforce more straightforward, and Meg was not sure how she would respond to talk of a strange dark teacher, 8 or 9 feet tall, and even less sure how she would react to the description of a cherubim. She would probably insist that they were suffering from mass psychosis and that they should see a psychiatrist at once. Or is it because they were just afraid to talk about it, even to Mother? Meg wondered, as she took sugar, cocoa, milk, and a saucepan from the kitchen and returned to the pantry. Dr. Kalubra was saying, "That stuff about cosmic screens and rips and distant galaxy offends every bit of the rational part of me." Mrs. Murray leaned against the counter. "You didn't believe in farandole either until I proved them to you." "You haven't proven to me, Dr. Louise said. "Yet." She looked kind of slightly ruffled, like a little gray bird. Her short curly hair was gray. Her eyes were gray above a small beak of a nose. She wore a gray flannel suit. "The reason I think you may be right is that you go to that idiot machine." He pointed at the microelectron microscope. "The way my husband used to go to his violin. It was always like a lover's meeting." Mrs. Murray turned away from her idiot machine. I wish I never heard of farandole, much less come to the conclusions." She stopped abruptly, then said, "By the way, kids, I was rather surprised just before you all barged into the lab to have Mr. Jenkins called to suggest that we give Charles Wallace defense lessons." "Mr. Jenkins?" Meg wondered aloud, and she said, "Mr. Jackson never calls parents. Parents have to go to him." She almost asked, "Are you sure it was Mr. Jenkins?" and stopped herself as she remembered that she had not told Jenny, and the horrible Mr. Jenkins, not Mr. Jenkins, who had turned into a bird of nothingness. Mr. Jenkins, Louise had resented so fiercely. She should have told Jenny. She would tell him first thing in the morning. Charles Wallace climbed up onto one of the lab stools and perched close to his mother. "What I really need are lessons in adaptation. I've been reading Darwin and he hasn't helped me much." "See what I mean?" Calvin asked Dr. Luis. That's hardly what one expects from a 6-year-old. He really does read Darwin, Meg assured the doctor. And I still haven't quite learned how to adapt, Charles Wallace added. Dr. Luis was making a paste of cocoa, sugar, and a little hot water from one of Mrs. Murray's retorts. This is just water, isn't it? She asked. From our artesian well, the very best water. Dr. Luis added milk, little by little. You kids are too young to remember, and your mother is a good 10 years younger than I am. But I'll never forget a great many years ago when the first astronauts went to the moon and I sat up all night to watch them. I remember it all right, Mrs. Murray said. I wasn't all that young. Dr. Luis stirred the cocoa, which was heating over the Bunsen burner. You remember those first steps on the moon, so tentative to begin with, on that strange, airless, alien terrain? Then, in a short time, Armstrong and Aldrin were striding about confidently, and the commentator remarked on this as an extraordinary example of man's remarkable ability to adapt. All they had to adapt to was the moon's surface, Meg objected. It wasn't inhabited. I'll bet when our astronauts reach someplace with the inhabitants, it won't be so easy. It's a lot simpler to adapt to low gravity or no atmosphere, or even sandstorms than it is to horrible, hostile inhabitants. One Braz, who had an uncanine fondness for cocoa, came padding out of the lab, his nose twitching in anticipation. He stood on his hind legs and put his front paws on Charles Wallace's shoulders. Dr. Kluber asked Meg, do you think the first graders in the village school are hostile inhabitants then? Of course! Charles isn't like them. They're so hostile toward them. People are always hostile to anybody who's different. Until they get used to him, the doctor said. They're not getting used to Charles. Charles Wallace, fondling the big dog, said, don't forget to give Forrest a saucer. He likes cocoa. You have the strangest pets, Dr. Louise said, but she poured a small dish of cocoa for Fornabras. I'll let it cool a bit more before I put it on the floor, Meg. We need mugs. Okay. Meg hurried off to the kitchen, collecting a stack of mugs, and returned to the laboratory. Dr. Luis lined them up and poured the cocoa. Speaking of pets, how's my namesake? Meg nearly spilled the cocoa she was handing to her mother. She looked closely at Dr. Luis, but through the question he had seen pointed, the little bird face showed nothing more than an amused interest. As Charles Wallace said, Dr. Luis was very good at talking on one level and thinking on another. Charles Wallace answered the question. Luis the larger is a magnificent thing. I wonder if she likes some cocoa. Snakes like milk, don't they? Mrs. Murray said firmly, you are not going back out tonight to find that snake. If the snake is magnificent, though she be, likes cocoa, they say your experimental zeal for daylight. Luis is undoubtedly sound asleep. Dr. Luis carefully poured out the last of the cocoa into her own mug. Some snakes are very sociable at night. 20 years ago, I was working in a hospital in the Philippines. I had a boa constrictor for a pet. We had a problem with rats in the ward, and my boa constrictor did a thorough job of keeping the rodent population down. He also liked cream of mushroom soup, though I never tried him on cocoa. He was a delightful companion in the evenings, affectionate and cuddly. Meg did not think she would enjoy cuddling with a snake, even Louise. He also had an impeccable judgment about human nature. He was naturally a friendly creature, and if he showed me that he liked or distrusted somebody, I took him seriously. We had a man brought to the men's ward who seemed to have nothing more serious wrong with him than a slightly inflamed appendix. But my bone consistency took a dislike to him the moment he was admitted. That night he tried to kill the man in the next bed. Fortunately, we got to him in time. But the snake knew after that I listened to his warnings immediately. Twin has the same instincts about people, Mrs. Murray said. Too bad we humans have lost it. Nate wanted to say, so does Lewis the larger, but her mother or the doctor would have asked her on what experience was based on such a remark. It would have sounded more likely coming from the twins. Charles Wallace regarded Dr. Calubra, who had returned to the red leather chair and was sipping cocoa. Her leg tucked under her like a child. As a matter of fact, she was considerably smaller than Meg, Charles said. We take Louis very seriously, Dr. Louise. Very seriously. Dr. Louise nodded. Her voice was light and high. That was what I had in mind. Calvin finished his cocoa. Thank you very much. I better get on home now. See you in school tomorrow, Meg. Thanks again, Mrs. Murray. Dr. Calubra. Good night. When he had gone, Mrs. Murray said, all right, Charles. The twins have been in bed for an hour. Meg, it's time for you too. Charles, I'll come check on you in a few minutes. As they left their lab, Meg could see her mother turning back to the microelectron microscope. Meg undressed slowly, standing by her attic window, wondering if Dr. Louise talk about snakes had been an entirely casual chat over a cup of cocoa. Perhaps it was only the strange events of the evening which caused her to look for meanings under the surface, or might well be unimportant conversation. She turned out the lights and looked out the window. She could see across the vegetable garden to the orchard, but the trees still held enough leaves so that she could not see into the north pasture. Was there really a cherubim waiting at the star-watching rock, curled up into a giant feathery ball, all those eyes closed in sleep? Was he real? Was he real? And with that, we end this on the chapter. We end this chapter. Hope you all enjoyed my reading. Anyway, I'll catch y'all later. Catch y'all later. Bye. But first, say hi to Fortune. Hello, Fortune. Say hi. Anyway, bye.